Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the Aztec capital's jade-laced courts, where one forbidden liaison cracked open the gates to conquest and gave relationship goals a whole new, terrifying meaning, perfect for a half-dream. You'll hunker down among half-rotted straw beds and wince at the bouquet of pozole gone off, while the distant hiss of obsidian blades practically whispers, "Maybe you should have stayed home." Between sniffing the heady aroma of blood-red cochineal dye and dodging whispered gossip about Cortés's pale-faced charm, you'll start to wonder, was dating really safer than politics? All this unfolds beneath towering feathered headdresses, where luxury screams louder than the occasional heart ritual offering. Now, before you question every life choice that led you here, dim the lights, grab a comfy blanket, then hit that like button and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the content I share here. This is just one of many imperial train wrecks to come. A damp morning haze drifts across the interlaced wooden walkways of Tenochtitlan's market aisle, reflecting off jade-green waters threaded below. You cradle a fresh jaguar skin codex, its parchment pages still stiff from glue made of Maggi sap and plant fibers. A sharp bite of masa cakes lingers on your tongue, warmed in clay pots that steam reddish broth flecked with chilies. Nearby, the acrid scent of poppy resin incense curls through reed huts, competing with the sour tang of fermenting pulque. Your quill, carved from an eagle feather, drags pigment ground from cinnabar and charcoal across the fibrous sheet. Moisture clings to your skin as the lake's breeze rustles through woven reed roofs overhead. You taste the dusty grit of volcanic ash that sometimes fell onto your food during ritual feasts in the Grand Plaza. Flecks of deer hide ink dot your fingers alongside the sharp, rusty odor of blood from a nearby sacrificial platform. Your wrist stiffens from grinding copal to a fine powder for ceremony glyphs, even as sweat trickles into your eyes. By this point, your senses reel with the clash of spices, incense, and sweat, but your mind stays focused on the precise shapes of each glyph. You dip your quill into a bowl of water thick with crushed cochineal, its rosy aroma barely masking the fetid canal just yards away. Between the clamoring merchants, you catch whispers of nobles admiring La Malinche's poised translations from behind lattice windows. Your stomach churns as you recall the tang of roasted grasshoppers sold by street vendors at dawn. A fly buzzes through the steam of your morning broth, leaving a hint of decay on the lip of your spoon. Tenochtitlan's mud brick streets exhale warmth under your sandals, releasing the faint smell of dried human waste baked by the sun. You sense the sour undercurrent of mole sauce rich with chilies and toasted seeds, lingering even after the meal is gone. The lake's briny mist fuses with the aroma of wet reed mats where you kneel to inscribe tribute tallies. Your tongue still tingles from the sharp zest of fermented squash kernels taken during midday offerings. Even as your shoulders ache, the chorus of smells, earthy paper, pungent fish oil, and sweet incense, keeps you alert to every nuance of court record. You slide your codex beneath jagged obsidian blades displayed for tribute tally ceremonies, inhaling the cold metallic scent. The bitter aftertaste of cacao lingers from your last ration, reminding you of the nobles' distant laughter. You note the precise placement of red ochre dots marking captives in your census glyphs. The stench of roasted turkey drippings mingles with clay dust from battered pottery shelves. Your quill shakes as a ripple courses through the causeway from incoming canoes laden with tribute. In the undercurrent, a whiff of scorched feathers from recent sacrificial rites reaches your nostrils. You taste the lip-tingling smoke of grilled maize husks sold by vendors along the causeway rail. Piles of dried herbs slump in woven baskets, releasing piney notes that drift across your workspace. At this stage, your senses have mapped every aroma and flavor of the capital's markets, but the task of tallying tribute still stretches ahead. You scrub traces of pigment from your palms in a basin of lime water, the chalky smell swirling into the midday air. A noble's scented cloak brushes past you, its floral charm, a jarring contrast to sweat-stained textiles. The slimy residue of soaked ammet bark clings to the table where you press fresh pages for decoding. You sip a saltwater infusion meant to settle bellyaches after too much pulque. The damp breeze carries the distant fragrance of lilies adorning the great temple's base. Your journal's edge sticks to your palm from the damp, vine-like algae growing between wooden planks. You sense the lingering, sour sweat of palace guards pacing beside stone pillars. Your tongue still recalls the faint bitterness of unripe tomatoes eaten hastily between scrolls. All these sensations weave into your memory, but your pen must still mark every goblet, grain, and garb in royal inventories. At sunset, the acrid smoke of burning crops drifts toward your table as reports of war captives arrive. You trace the edge of your codex cover, feeling the stiff leather once dyed with indigo. A single whiff of roasted chili flakes reminds you of messenger hawks swooping over reed roofs. Your chest tightens at the sour undercurrent in the air. Ill omens your superior's record alongside tribute lists. You taste the chalky residue of Maggi water rinsed from ceremonial cups in the courtyard. A stray breeze carries the faint odor of decomposing algae from the canal's edge. Your gaze shifts to the final page, where you'll record how many shields and slaves arrive at court before nightfall. A pungent last gulp of pulque steels your resolve for the final glyphs. By torchlight, you smirk at the irony that the Empire's fate is counted in stains on your codex, wouldn't you know it? Sunlight filters through woven reed blinds onto the sandstone platform at the heart of Montezuma's council hall. Eagles carved from white marble flank the throne dais, their eyes inlaid with obsidian glinting in flickering torchlight. Nobles draped in quetzal-feathered cloaks cluster by the central pillar, their jeweled obsidian pendants clinking with every shift. The heavy hum of ceremonial drums fades as Cortés's damp leather boots echo against the tiled floor. La Malinche steps forward, her delicate reed-woven mantle brushing the polished surface, and the room hushes. Montezuma's voice, low and measured, cuts through the murmur of advisors debating tribute demands. A priest plucks a slackened string on a harpsichord-like instrument, tension rising with each tentative note. Courtiers trade angled glances, some hopeful, others laced with suspicion, as they await the emperor's next decree. The sharp scent of wet clay from recently laid adobe bricks mingles with the faint musk of perfumed oils. By now, you can sense how a single whispered translation can spark quiet defiance or desperate loyalty. Every directive uttered in Nahuatl travels through La Malinche's lips in Spanish before Cortés claims the merit. Silk banners dyed with cochineal red drape overhead, smothering the daylight into a crimson gloom. An advisor's hand hovers over a carved stone tablet, fingers trembling as he prepares to record Cortés's demands. A hush falls when Montezuma's gilded staff thuds against the floor, a subtle reminder of his uneasy authority. Cortés leans in, his breath faintly sour, as he offers a silent nod to La Malinche's translation. Voices rise and fall in rapid-fire Nahuatl, exchanged for clipped Castilian, creating a rhythm of control. Two nobles exchange curt bows, their embroidered socks brushing the dust of the palace's inner courtyard. You notice the way La Malinche's gaze flickers, calculated, guarded, trained by necessity. The flicker of torchlight reveals sweat pooling under Cortés' breastplate, betraying his controlled posture. The subtle clack of obsidian blades at a guard's waist reminds everyone of the true cost of a misstep. A distant gong signals the arrival of fresh tribute, cacao pods and jade trinkets paraded in ritual procession. Montezuma absorbs the spectacle with a vacant smile, his tension only deepening behind carved mask. Whispers swirl that Cortés plans his next march, and every noble here judders at the thought. La Malinche translates rumors with an unwavering calm, each word sharpening the divide between allies. An advisor clears his throat, presenting tribute tallies that Cortés scrutinizes through narrowed eyes. The clap of wooden sandals against flagstones punctuates each decree with unnerving precision. Rich tapestries embroidered with conquests from earlier reigns hang neglected, their colors muted by royal neglect. Each time La Malinche speaks, the chamber tilts, her voice a pivoting axis of survival and surrender. Cortés' scarred gauntlet taps impatiently on the stone dais, echoing in the hush like a judge's gavel. The priest's chant flutters into silence as Montezuma gestures for water carved in volcanic stone. Courtiers bow their heads, weighing every translated syllable against their own fractured loyalties. You can almost taste the metallic threat in the air, as acrid as smoke from extinguished torches. La Malinche's translation smooths over Cortés' threats, softening the blow with selective omission. A footman drizzles a thin stream of scented water over the emperor's sandal-clad feet, an ironic act of servitude. Distant drums beat once more, marking the end of this session and the promise of another to come. In the charged silence, every breath seems to carry the weight of pending betrayal. By now, you feel the chamber's walls close in, etched with unspoken pacts and blood-laced promises. The final hush descends as Cortés folds his arms, waiting for La Malinche's last interpretation. Montezuma shifts on his throne, his plume headdress rustling against the marble backdrop. A lone quetzal feather drifts to the floor, forgotten in the frenzy of political theatre. The guards step forward, signaling the council's disbandment under Cortés' watchful glare. Nobles disperse, their faces masks of constrained relief and buried resentment. La Malinche retreats into the shadows, her silent victory measured by each faltering step. Cortés' nod sends a ripple of fear through the emptied hall, the echo lingering like a warning. Even in this ornate gloom, the undercurrent of suspicion refuses to be silenced. The stone floor still vibrates with the ghost of every command, waiting for the next twist. You'd think this was a sacred rite, but it's just another day in the Empire's death throes. The basalt causeways underfoot glisten with algae and lake spray, chilling your sandals with each step. Your fingers press into the rough grooves of carved stele, tracing glyphs etched centuries earlier. The hide of your jaguar skin codex cover wrinkles under your palm, revealing the stiff grain of treated leather. A feathered mantle grazes your shoulder, its quetzal plumes flicking against your cheek with uncanny softness. Beneath you, the bark mats of the scribal pavilion crackle with embedded grit from volcanic ash. Each handmade brush feels springy between your thumb and forefinger as you load its bristles with bright pigment. The cold weight of a jade bead, clutched in your fist, contrasts with the warmth left by the honeyed incense bowl. Threads of woven magi fiber snag against calloused fingertips, reminding you of the hand-braided ropes binding tribute bundles. The cool touch of stone columns overhead, and the brittle snap of dried reeds beneath the bench ground you in each moment's textures. Even the silk-blend robes worn by passing nobles brush against the carved bench, muffling its hollow echo. A shallow rumble throbs through the pavilion floor whenever canoes slip along the canal's edge, like a distant heartbeat underfoot. Your skirt's hem scrapes against rough adobe plaster where scribes once practiced glyphs in training sessions. The iron bristles of a guard's whisk, broom scrape dust and chaff into the corners of the tiled floor. Fingers coated in cinnabar blush the palm when you grip your quill at its wooden ferrule. The braided sash around Montezuma's waist shifts with every weighted step he takes toward the council dais. You press the side of your Paixley quill case, a hollowed gourd, for steadiness in your next incision. A stray fleck of pigment flakes from your brush into the leather cover, embedding itself like a tiny scar. Your cold wrist rubs raw against the coarse linen sleeve left damp from morning ritual baths. That contrast of hard stone and soft fabric underscores how each texture here serves as a subtle reminder of who holds sway in this city. Hand over hand, you slide a parchment sheet between wooden clamps, feeling the tension pull your fingers taut. The lacquered surface of sacrificial blades at the altar counterpoints the rough handle wrapped in Maggie cord. A crack forms as reed rope binding the scroll gives way, its fibers itching against your wrist. Inhale the vibrato of your own breath against the carved bone whistles decorating nobles' belts. A guard's metal gauntlet clanks unexpectedly close, rattling through the hush like an accusation. You pinch away a stray hair from the page, feeling the prick of sweat beneath the nail. The cracked heel of your moccasin snags briefly on a polished obsidian floor tile. Each adjustment of the reed shade overhead screeches as the iron hinge bites into the carved beam. The woven reed mat beneath you shifts whenever a guard takes cautious steps across its surface, each plank whispering of hidden imperfections. A silk sash slipping from La Malinche's waist grazes your forearm, its cool, opulent threads mocking your coarse attire. Beneath the bench, your calf brushes long-forgotten animal bones left by earlier rituals. Your skin prickles as the breeze lifts loose hairs and feathers from nobles' coiffures. The chiseled ridges of temple steps rub raw against your bare calves when you descend to deliver records. You trace the embossed pattern on a tribute chest, counting the tiny bumps where jade beads once rested. A brief tremor shifts the wooden beam above, sending splinters that graze the architrave. You press palm to column, sensing the hollow chamber within, as though the wall itself is breathing. Even an irritating flea's pinch feels like the smallest tremor in a city, teetering on collapse. Each dust, mote dancing in a beam of light, seems tangible on your tongue when you breathe too deep. A pinch from a loose stitching in your tunic line jolts your skin, drawing your hand to scratch before remembering decorum. A guard shifts position, and the leather straps of his sandals squeak against the floor. You grip the edge of the table as nobles' sandals scrape past, rattling gravel embedded in stone crevices. A sudden chill from the volcanic stones beneath your back sends goosebumps across your spine. Your fingertip chills on a jade-carved counter where tribute items rest for inspection. The final brushstroke on your codex page sets your hand shaking, textured proof of an empire's heartbeat at your wrist. The mirrored sheen of obsidian at the altar catches the torchlight, its slick surface daring you to touch. The rough weave of your tunic sleeve rubbing against woven belt fibers feels oddly comforting now. You lean back against the cool stone pedestal, savoring each scratch and smooth surface in quiet rebellion. Who would have guessed that an empire's collapse could feel like a full-body exfoliation? A salt-tinged breeze drifts across the wooden dock where half-starved servants unload tribute cacao. The faint tang of fermented maize lingers in the air, a humble offering for wealthy ears. Fresh adobe walls glow amber under the afternoon sun, warming the courtyard where destinies shift. In the shadows behind a cluster of bark huts, Malinche, later known as La Malinche, stands barefoot on damp earth. She traces the grain of a carved wooden box holding beads meant for Cortés' entourage. The scent of oak smoke drifts from distant cooking fires, mingling with the sweet musk of jasmine petals. Eyes narrowed, Malinche watches Spanish banners flicker across the plaza's flagstones. In that charged hush, a single spoken word can become a blade sharper than obsidian. Those early moments bristled with cautious promise, a fragile truce built on necessity. Survival outweighed loyalty, and every whispered syllable marked a deeper step into storm clouds. Sold into servitude by her own kin, Malinche learned Castilian phrases pressed between rough Spanish lips. Each vowel tasted foreign yet promising, a language that could become both shield and weapon. Her first phrase, clipped and careful, carved out a slender path toward an unknown future. A small knot of unfamiliar sounds offered a fleeting thrill alongside trembling fear. Over crude lean-tos, she taught herself syllables by tracing slender stick marks in sandy soil. The damp grains slipped through her fingers, reminding her of stolen freedom. That tactile lesson underfoot cemented each new word like footprints in shifting dust. Periodic recaps of remembered Nahuatl grammar fluttered at the edge of her mind. Before long, she stood before Cortés, her voice poised to translate conquest rather than counsel. His cloak, stained by travel and ambition, brushed past her bare ankle without a glance. In the dim glow of a makeshift command tent, she became a living bridge between worlds. The bitter smoke of kindled pinewood crackled overhead as Cortés assessed her quietly. Each translated command sharpened his advantage, layering betrayal upon old alliances. Her heart pounded against embroidered fabric as she converted tribal pleas into Spanish strategy. That weight on her chest felt both protective and crushing, a double-edged symbiosis. Whispers in Nahuatl travelled upward from trembling lips, reassembled by Malinche into loading orders. The soft rustle of quetzal feathers in her sash underscored every syllable born from necessity. Cortés' fierce gaze calculated the power of her voice before endorsing each interpretation. A passing breeze carried the faint zing of unripe guava from a nearby fruit cart. Hidden behind polite translation, her survival strategy unfolded like a coiled snake. Over campfires, she listened to soldiers swap rumors and mapped every accent and idiom. That quiet note-taking became a ledger of leverage, recorded in the margins of her mind. In hushed twilight gatherings, she learned to frame Nahuatl pleas into Spanish demands with surgical precision. Each syllable bore the weight of her lineage's ruin and her uncertain loyalty. Her ascent from battered slave to indispensable confidant came at the cost of ancestral trust. Even under starlit skies, the taste of salt from lake spray reminded her of home's loss. As dawn stretched its fingers across the camp, her reflection in Cortés' polished breastplate looked less like herself. That image whispered of someone trapped between worlds, fading piece by piece. Every morning brought the same choice: conceal the truth or face immediate erasure. Her smooth translations ensured she would outlive any naive hopes of reconciliation. By the time Cortés offered her a bejeweled cloak, she understood betrayal as survival's currency. The cloak's fabric brushed silk against her skin, a reminder of the gulf between conqueror and conquered. She accepted the garment without gratitude, sensing its weight would linger like a mark. In the hush that followed, her words paved the way for sieges rather than peace. The ember glow of campfires lit her path forward, one dictated by conquest, not compassion. Despite the cost, each measured translation stitched a lifeline she could not relinquish. Survival has never been a gracious gift. Morning light streams through painted lattice panels into the open courtyard of Montezuma's palace. Polished obsidian pillars reflect fractured mosaics of sunlight across marble floors worn by ceremonial processions. Noble attendants kneel in orderly rows, their embroidered mantles rustling like distant winds over still water. Montezuma descends the terraced steps with measured grace, his golden mask catching each sunbeam. He pauses at an altar carved with conquest scenes, offering silent acknowledgement of futures unwritten. Cortés' tent stands nearby, canvas walls taut with readiness and ambition dripping in every fold. Courtiers murmur behind velvet fans, trading furtive glances as the two leaders stand face to face. A hush settles over the gathering as Montezuma's voice emerges, calm yet heavy with regret. The air trembles with unspoken dread, a fragile calm before the unfolding storm. He speaks of tribute, of peace, and of warning signs veiled beneath Spanish courtesy. Cortés replies in clipped Castilian, offering alliances veiled by steel and faithless promises. Each word slides through La Malinche's lips, reshaped into Nahuatl before it returns as a fragile treaty. A soft breeze carries petals from ceremonial flowers, drifting over curses unsaid. Advisors shift uneasily, weighing each translation for hidden fractures. The scent of smouldering incense does little to steady hearts burdened by destiny. In that moment, sovereign and conqueror share equal stakes in a perilous gamble. Montezuma's gaze flickers to the distant causeway of salt, recalling the lake's silent threat. Cortés' hand drapes possessively over a canteen of water, an emblem of claimed ownership. Courtiers exchange coded nods, their loyalty tested by every syllable passed through Malintzin. As pleas for peace unfold, tension coils like a living serpent beneath gilded palm fronds. Montezuma pauses, weighing ancestral duty against the push of foreign steel. The Prince of Tenochtitlan imagines the empire's memory carved into sun-warmed obsidian. Cortés stands unwavering, each step measured to assert a rising dominion. La Malinche's translation bridges goodwill and treachery in equal measure. An advisor's hand twitches toward a poised obsidian dagger at his belt. The weight of history settles on Montezuma's crown of reef pearls and emerald beads. Cortés' cross glints from where it hangs among battle standards, a symbol of conquest entwined. Courtiers sense the fragile balance teetering between tribute and subjugation. Montezuma's voice softens, entreating Cortés with ancestral logic about shared lineage. The conquistador's lips curl into a controlled smile, masking dismissive contempt. Every decision echoes through tiled corridors, leaving invisible cracks in palace walls. Malintzin stands unwavering, her silhouette framed by dancing shadows and flickering flame. She translates Montezuma's hope for partnership into words that promise dominion. In the quiet aftermath, courtiers exhale slowly, uncertain whether relief or ruin awaits. Montezuma watches his people's fate hinge on papyrus-thin accords sealed in coral ink. Cortés surveys the tribute-laden canoes as if they were proof of an empire already his. An ostrich feather fan brushes against the emperor's cheek, a reminder of fleeting luxury. Advisors gather broken fragments of courtly etiquette, aligning them with conquest's harsh logic. As midday sun climbs, the heat intensifies the unspoken dread among the assembly. Montezuma bows, concluding the council with a tremor of resignation. Cortés offers a curt nod, signaling triumph, obscured by civility. Courtiers disperse like startled birds, carrying rumors of broken oaths in their wake. La Malinche remains behind, dusting off her mantle, as if shedding another part of herself. In the sudden stillness, the palace feels hollow, its grandeur echoing a hollow promise. Montezuma ascends to inner chambers, heavy feet echoing through empty halls. A solitary feather drifts from the emperor's headdress, settling on mosaic tiles etched with prophecy. Even as gates close, the taste of betrayal lingers in every carved stone. Nothing like a courteous chat over cocoa to topple a civilization. The cool marble floor beneath Malinche's sandals feels smooth against calloused skin, its surface etched with centuries-old water stains. Fingers brush over the rippled grain of a cedar railing that lines the palace balcony, worn soft by countless ceremonial processions. The polished surface of a jade figurine, nestled in Montezuma's palm, captures a subtle warmth from the midday sun. Beneath thick obsidian tiles, wooden beams creak softly as if sighing under the weight of history. A silk-lined cloak drapes over Malinche's shoulders, its fine threads sliding against her collarbone like slippery shadows. The cool luster of gold necklaces rests heavily around the emperor's neck, each link a solid reminder of his burden. Polished shells embedded in ceremonial sandals glint with reflected light, sending tiny patterns dancing across stone walls. Malinche's fingertips graze the braided Maggie fibers of Cortés's satchel, noting the rough contrast to her own garments. A brief pause at this threshold allows the tension of burdensome attire to settle, like sediment drifting to the bottom of a quiet pool. Tapestry edges, once coarse, now give way to pliant softness after years of careful handling by palace hands. The carved indentation in a volcanic rock mortar captures lingering grains of crushed cochineal, dry against her palm. Each step across the courtyard reveals subtle cracks in stretched hide shields, their surfaces puckered from past skirmishes. Malinche adjusts the weight of her embroidered belt, the cocoon of fabric compressing ribs she can no longer hear crack. The rough bast fibers of a messenger's pouch rub abrasively against the skin at her hip when she moves. Hands slip around the cold curvature of a ceremonial blade handle wrapped in sinew, and the metal's chill seeps inward. A carved bone whistle, smooth as river stones, rests in the temple treasurer's palm before passing to translators. An echo of each texture here records the quiet unraveling of alliances in tactile detail. The tactile chill of night air cools sweat on foreheads, threading goosebumps along flesh beneath ornate sleeves. A subtle vibration carries through the floor as the distant thrumming of war drums hums up from the lake's edge. The metal cuff binding a messenger's wrist rasped softly with every gesture of urgency. Beneath painted pewter bowls stacked for ceremonial feasts, the faint ridge of each carved design presses unexpected warmth into wooden tables. Malinche's cloak gathers damp dew from early mist, leaving the back of her neck slick and alert. The coarse weave of a servant's tunic absorbs the scent of tributary beans, staining its fibers with earthen hues. Fragments of broken obsidian glass litter the temple threshold, their jagged edges poised under slippered feet. A single gold disc embedded in the palace gate slides against its iron mount with a soft, protesting screech. Fingers curve around the rounded smoothness of a carved wooden scepter, weighing authority in one hand. Each tactile encounter reinforces the fragility of power in this fragile moment. The slight give of reed mats underfoot belies the rigid tableau of nobles gathered within. A breath of wind jostles hanging lotus petals, tissues brushing cheeks with a whisper of cool silk. The indentation of each footstep in the clay floor of the council chamber holds echoes of past judgments. Every sensation contributes another line to the ledger of shifting destinies. A fine layer of ash clings to skin from incense burned hours before, gritty against fingertips. The polished heel of a slipper taps staccato against marble, sending tiny tremors through crystalline chandeliers. A cooled bronze brazier holds fingerprints like fossils, relics of hands long since folded away. Malinche senses the slick surface of damp stone benches as she crouches to read a hastily scrawled dispatch. These textures carry the weight of unspoken pacts and cracked oaths beneath each measured breath. The firm grain of a mahogany desk supports every encoded plea before it passes through translation. A guard's chainmail rustles with each step, its metallic chime a stark contrast to woven fiber hush. A stray feather from a ceremonial headdress clings to a sleeve, rasping with newfound insistence. Fingers graze the chipped edge of a wheel-thrown clay cup, a heartbeat of imperfection in perfection's midst. The final recast of fabric and metal renders every movement a study in poised volatility. The weave of a silk blind drapes across Malinche's vision when she lowers her head to record names. In the hush, the static cling between garments seems to echo the friction of whispers behind closed doors. A faint electric sensation buzzes across skin, as if charged by unseen ceremonial currents. These textures map each hidden fracture in a world teetering on collapse. None of this opulence shields the truth on the tongue beneath every breath. In the play of textures, from polished stone to whispered cloth, the empire's unraveling finds tactile testimony. Every thread and chip in these walls bears witness to the thin seam between allegiance and annihilation. Even the coldest jade admits the weight of regret when pressed under fingers. Bet they never covered tactile betrayal in etiquette manuals. A pale moonlight filters through a collapsed temple roof, settling on moss-covered stones lining a hidden drainage channel. A soft undercurrent of brackish water rises from the canal, carrying the subtle taste of centuries-old silt and salt. Fine residue of powdered calcite clings to the tongue like a faint whisper of ancient ritual cleansings. Mossy walls exude a damp earthiness that melds with the faint sweetness of trapped pollen grains. A hint of charred maize drifts from a charnel pit beyond the corridor, lingering like a distant memory of feasts. The metallic tang of water dripping from corroded bronze pipes adds depth to the air's layered aromas. Low-lying fog clings to the floor, bringing with it a ghostly whiff of fermented agave that once fueled festival evenings. Soft echoes magnify each inhalation, drawing explorers deeper into the shrine's scent-soaked history. The interplay of brackish tang and pollen sweetness evokes submerged offerings beneath these ancient stones. Each inhaled scent guides the mind through corridors of ritual remembrance. Ancient glyphs line the walls, their ochre pigments releasing a mild spice undertone that still clings after centuries. Lingering smoke from ceremonial fires seeps through cracks, adding a muted warmth to the damp air. A taste of mineral-rich water coats cracked lips, sharpening awareness of the hidden enclave. A delicate floral aroma drifts from pressed petals plastered into stone niches, softening the cavern's hush. The ground beneath ripples with moisture, exhaling a sweet, decaying reed scent from long submerged galleries. Shallow puddles reflect flickers of torchlight, and their musty fragrance carries hints of buried timbers. Faint notes of roasted amaranth confections conjure images of offerings laid at these very altars. Each breath becomes a tapestry woven from incense ghosts and stale earth, mapping silent testimonies below the city. Silent waters and earthy aromas have revealed only fragments of Tenochtitlan's secrets. Each discovery tastes of both decay and wonder. Collapsed stone arches drip with condensation, and the water's stale note recalls long-forgotten purification rites. A whisper of chocolate aroma emerges from a sealed chamber, hinting at sacred confections buried beneath ash. Rough-hewn blocks exude a chalky scent as they rub against worn sandals, collecting trace dust on skin. Fragments of broken pottery release subtle wafts of herbal infusions once used for healing ceremonies. Each step forward releases a tremor of musty peat and sweet resins hidden within wall crevices. The cool breeze through shattered windows carries a faint citrus tang, perhaps from citric offerings placed ages ago. A soft hum of dripping water crescendos to a distant echo, blending moisture's mineral bite with incense's residue. Shifting shadows mingle with scent-laden air, wrapping the chamber in layers of time's lingering flavors. Fragments of pottery and the faint trace of floral oils sketch a portrait of ancient rituals, those lingering hints of aroma guide exploration toward deeper revelations. Hidden niches hold blackened gourds, their charred shells still emitting a ghostly whisper of spiced broth. A subtle soil aroma rises from the floor where sacrificial offerings once rested, grounding the senses in past devotion. A stale sweetness of crystallized honey clings to alcove edges, preserving echoes of ceremonial seas. Mineral flecks on wet stone surfaces glisten with the taste of iron-laced runoff. Gentle drafts weave incense's muted cedar notes through narrow passageways, soothing the ear and nostrils. Echoes of muffled chants seem to carry pollen's faint fragrance deeper into uncharted chambers. A faint breath of vanilla-like aroma drifts from resinous deposits, offering comfort amid decayed grandeur. Each inhaled essence feels like a soft lullaby from a civilization drifting into slumber. The muted remnants of spice and resin capture a civilization's zenith and its quiet demise. In every echo of scent lies a story waiting to be told. Cool moss underfoot cushions each step, carrying the subtle dampness of ages past. The palate registers an earthy aftertaste as explorers trace patterns engraved in sacrificial basins. Soft motes of dust swirl in torchlight, releasing a faint tang of old plaster and roasted seeds. Whispers of lavender aroma murmur through fractured ceilings, remnants of distant garden offerings. A gentle wave of moisture recedes across carved stone, exhaling the soft scent of petrichor. Lingering hints of burned copal soothe the mind, weaving a thread of calm through the subterranean gloom. A final aroma of cinnamon-dusted maize trails through open passages, offering a sweet farewell to restless spirits. These layers of taste and smell guide the journey toward truths buried beneath time's resting veil. Late afternoon sun drapes the excavation trenches in amber hues, casting sharp angles across half-buried courtyard walls. Survey flags punctuate the dusty ground, their neon orange stark against weathered stone foundations. Rows of labeled grid markers ripple beneath the gentle breeze, each flag a silent claim on buried legacies. Local officials stand at the trench's perimeter, their polished loafers scuffing fine grit in silent demonstration of authority. Archaeologists in wide-brim hats confer over laminated site plans, eyes darting as they negotiate territorial boundaries. A museum curator's clipboard clicks in the hush, tallying fragments destined for faraway display halls. Indigenous elders, wrapped in hand-woven cloaks, observe from the sidelines, their stoic presence a subtle reminder of ancestral ties. Trowel meets terracotta with a crisp scrape, and tension ripples through the assembled observers. At this point, every uncovered shard feels less like a historical revelation and more like a contested trophy in a tug-of-war over memory. Whispered asides between lead archaeologists hint at funding deadlines pressing on excavation schedules and interpretations alike. The curator's spectacles glint as they trace newly exposed glyphs, each symbol potentially rewriting local narratives. A visiting diplomat drapes an arm around a politician's shoulders, their quiet laughter belying whispered agreements in the shadows. Beneath protective tarps, notebooks bristle with competing provenance claims and draft press releases waiting to spin the story. The translator stands poised at the edge of the trench, her silence a stern reminder that every word here will be scrutinized. By this moment, the line between scholarly pursuit and political theatre has nearly vanished within the dust and debates. A legal advisor consults tablet screens, scrolling through cultural patrimony statutes that will determine the next headline. Volunteers shuffle forward at a curator's nod, eager faces lit by the promise of site certifications and future recognition. In the quiet that follows, the temperature drops. Not from the breeze, but from the collective realization that this dig is as much about power as it is about the past. Cameras mounted on tripods crane toward every newly unearthed fragment, primed to capture flashes destined for tomorrow's news cycle. Lawyers in pressed suits exchange nods over walkie-talkies, coordinating asset transfers that outrank academic reputations. A field director's sharp whistle signals lunch, momentarily dissolving formalities into a choreographed procession of boxed meals. Plates of chicken stew circulate among officials, their polite nods toward indigenous guests more performative than sincere. Even the midday meal follows careful choreography. A fleeting display of respect before discussions return to ownership disputes. Press badges dangle from lanyards as reporters scurry to frame the dig as a triumph of collaborative heritage. Beneath friendly camera flashes, the true stakes lurk in permit renewals and funding allotments. An archivist gingerly lifts a cracked effigy, her reverence clashing with the curator's eagerness to ship it overseas. That small, chipped piece of pottery carries the weight of centuries and the heft of modern negotiations. Behind the fray, local volunteers persist in methodical brushstrokes, unaware that their work feeds a larger spectacle. As afternoon light softens, polite applause echoes through the trench, celebrating finds that were never just archaeological. A press drone hums overhead, its mechanical buzz a stark reminder that history here is under surveillance. Security guards, hired by unknown factions, patrol the site perimeter with solemn expressions. Their silent watch creates a buffer of authority more fortress than friendly academic field. At dusk, the trench's outline glows under portable LED lamps, illuminating half-revealed walls like a battlefield at night. Site directors huddle beside a stack of crates, hashing out final permits before contractors seal unauthorized sections. The air stiffens with anticipation as VIPs prepare for an evening unveiling intended to cement one narrative over the rest. In the shadowed corners, voices debate the ethics of exhibition versus repatriation, each argument a plea or a threat in diplomatic guise. With every whispered exchange, the contested past grows heavier, resisting any single version of truth. As darkness falls, headlamps carve circles of light into the trenches, revealing fragmented glyphs and faltering consensus. Night Watch volunteers record every movement in logbooks destined for legal hearings rather than academic journals. In this twilight, the site resembles a stage set for a drama of buried ambitions more than for rediscovering ancient lives. Each artifact bundled for transit bears a tag soaked in the sweat of jurisdictional battles. The hum of generators fills the air, powering floodlights as if to force clarity where none truly exists. Even the stones seem to whisper ironies about ownership, their voices muffled by layers of modern paperwork. When the morning's press releases arrive, they will brand this excavation a model of collaboration, whether or not that ever truly happened. After all, it takes more than trowels to unearth history. It takes a well-crafted narrative and a team of polished negotiators. A half-buried stone staircase arcs downward into a chamber slick with moss and scattered pottery shards. Fingers of explorers brush over rough-hewn basalt walls, tracing the faint indentations of centuries-old carvings. Uneven flagstones press against worn moccasins, sending tiny pebbles skittering into hidden crevices. Overhead, a carved wooden beam still bears grooves where braided ropes once supported ceremonial draperies. Cool air settles in the chamber, turning polished obsidian fragments into slippery, glassy traps. A pale layer of sediment pools in a shallow basin, its soft grit slipping between gloved fingertips. Jagged ceramic edges jut from the floor where ritual vessels once stood, requiring careful navigation. A whisper-thin film of dust dulls the shine of carved reliefs, its powdery texture gathering in each fissure. At this threshold, every surface becomes part of an unspoken chronicle, mapping devotion and decay in tactile relief. Thumbs slide along a limestone altar's smooth rim, feeling the gentle curve worn by countless ceremonies. Splinters of cochineal-tinged mural roll under palms, their roughness a reminder of once vibrant pigment. Frayed hemp cords from collapsed baskets tickle wrists as they brush against exposed masonry. The cool shell of a clay amphora rests solidly in gloved hands, its surface mottled with mineral deposits. Beneath a shoulder, the grain of a reed mat yields under weight, springing back like a tired cushion. A gloved hand explores the hollow interior of a stone basin, releasing a low, resonant thud. Fine ash clings to fingertips from incense burned long ago, its grit settling in the crooks of joints. A jagged flake of obsidian reflects torchlight, its glass-like edge startlingly cold against fabric. Even the roughest sandstone block reveals unexpected smooth patches where hands once rested. This play of hardness and softness charts a narrative of human touch, rituals etched in every chip and groove. Calloused palms trace the concentric rings of a basalt mortar, recalling its use in sacred preparations. Beneath boots, fractured tile seams hint at concealed water channels running beneath the chamber. Braided Maggie fibers, once binding scrolls, now snag and tear against coarse gloves. A fragment of gilded shell embedded in the floor slivers off under pressure, leaving a glimmering trail. Overhead drips fall in slow, rhythmic pulses, each drop leaving tiny dimples in the stone. Worn leather straps from ceremonial handles rasp against stone when lifted for inspection. The chamber's cool dampness carries faint echoes of distant chants, felt through every textured surface. stray fibers of moss weave between flagstones, their soft dampness contrasting sharply with jagged pottery shards. Iron fittings rust into a bumpy crust, betraying the slow erosion of once polished metal. Each traced groove and chipped edge becomes a line in the city's buried ledger of faith and power. A hidden metal ring, encrusted in soil, slips free under gentle tug, its weight surprising in open palms. Fingers slide along a fallen pillar base, noting the smooth transition from carved relief to broken remnant. Loose soil falls away in clumps when pressed, revealing fresh patterns in the underlying stone. Underfoot, interwoven rootlets snake through crevices, each thread a testament to nature's reclaiming force. A gloved hand glides over chipped pigments in a faded fresco, feeling the shallow pits where color once stood proud. Minor tremors in the floor signal distant footsteps, reminding all that this ghostly realm lies just beneath the living city. Rough foliage stuck to masonry crumbles into dust at the slightest touch, surrendering to human curiosity. Wooden planks in a raised platform groan under shifting weight, their hollow resonance echoing through the gloom. Fingers graze the ridge of a carved relief, following the rhythm of ancient storytelling in every notch. Each tactile discovery stitches together fragments of past ceremonies, reconstructing a ritual tapestry. A final sweep across a jade-carved counter captures the stone's chilly luster, as though pressing history into the present. Droplets of condensation bead along overhead cracks, their weight testing the chamber's silent integrity. A hidden alcove yields a smooth, curved obsidian mirror, its reflective edge startling in sudden light. The polished heel of sandals, skims, stony fragments, each scrape sounding a soft protest. Dust motes swirl in torchlight like drifting memories, settling on every scratch and scar. In these tactile moments, the chamber's voice emerges, not in ink or speech, but in the language of touch. Even the softest moss serves as a silent witness to this buried world's final lullaby. These fractured walls deliver a grit only time can forge, rubbing away every last trace of imperial glory. Torchlight flickers across inlaid jade tiles of the palace dining hall, casting emerald reflections on ornamental fountains dyed crimson with cochineal. The air trembles with the heady aroma of spiced cacao, its bittersweet notes entwining with clouds of exotic floral incense. Long tables carved from obsidian bear platters of glistening roasted turkey legs, glazed in honey and dusted with ground chili. Rich steam rises from braided maize loaves, carrying the nutty scent of toasting ears and warm masa. Underfoot, polished marble floors retain a faint musk from crushed orchids strewn for ceremonial processions. Courtiers nibble on candied amaranth clusters sweetened with agave syrup, their sugar-mined crispness punctuating the heavy feast. A pungent whisper of metallic iron drifts from heart-offering vessels laid before the emperor's dais. Subtle traces of copal resin add a cleansing sweetness to the layered fragrances of flesh, fire, and fruit. By moonlit standards, this feast transcends mere indulgence. It is a sensory manifesto of power and excess. Layered aromas and decadent flavors become silent proclamations of social rank rather than simple sustenance. Courtiers pause between bites to inhale the sweet breath of vanilla pods nestled in hollowed gourds. Scents of roasted chilies mingle with the earthy undercurrents of crushed cacao husks lining the serving trays. Slivers of smoked fish, resting on banana leaf platters, exhale a salty tang that cuts through honeyed sauces. Candied petals of marigold lace each dish, their floral sweetness whispering of ceremonial gardens long ago. Sticky sweat beads on the emperor's brow, stirred by the heady dance of perfume oils and simmering broths. A distant echo of jasmine-scented water cascading through carved aqueducts seeps into the feast's atmosphere. Plates rimmed with ground annatto release a peppery aroma that tickles nostrils with gentle heat. Pungent drifts of fermenting squash stew rise from clay bowls, grounding the opulence with rustic earthiness. Even the polished nectar cups seem rivalries of scent, each engraved vessel retaining its own subtle fragrance. Hands brush over smooth surfaces, rekindling the mingled scents of past ceremonies and present indulgence. Obsidian goblets catch the torchlight, reflecting flecks of chili oil clinging to their rims in sparkling constellations. Fragrant vapors rise from steaming bowls of amaranth porridge, enriched with ground pumpkin seeds. Metallic tang lingers on the tongue after sampling the emperor's prized blood-red wine fermented in clay amphorae. Sweet incense coils droop from gilded hooks above cushioned benches, releasing warmth-laden tendrils. Conches carved from polished shells serve salted meats, their briny aroma invoking distant coastal offerings. The sotto voce laughter of nobles ripples through the hall, mingling faintly with the rhythm of clinking utensils. Petals of rose-red hibiscus float in perfumed water bowls, their tart scent cutting through the room's richness. Each aromatic layer cements the feast's reputation as a theatre of elite excess and ceremonial indulgence. Moments pass in reverent hush, as if the scents themselves hold court over rival perfumes. Each inhalation feels like an unspoken bet in the silent game of aristocratic one-upmanship. Terrace gardens beyond open archways breathe herbal mint and clover into the evening air, tempering richer scents within. Herbal perfumes drift from bowls of spiced ground seeds scattered across low tables. The scent of honeyed pulque resonates with smoky undertones from distant bonfires lit for servants' quarters. Vessels holding citrus-infused water glimmer with dew, hinting at a crisp finish amid heady sweetness. A breeze rustles feather fans carved from exotic jungle species, carrying subtle moss and bark aromas from palace environs. Faint hints of tobacco smoke curl near the outer corridors, a reminder of commoners' offerings given beyond gilded gates. A whisper of resinous pine from ceremonial torches lingers, grounding the feast in ritual gravity. Warm gusts of scented vapors swirl as nobles rise to depart, their final breaths fragrant testaments to privilege. The feast's final echoes settle like a perfumed fog. Luxury lingered in empty goblets and feathered cloaks. Even as guests vanish, the hall's saturated aromas continue to narrate the empire's hierarchical tale. Scattered petals and crimson-tinted waters in fountains speak of ceremonies cast off at midnight. Marble steps still glisten with spilt wine that sharpened swords of influence more than steel. Cochineal-dyed tapestries gleam with residual warmth, as if fueling the hush left in the hall's wake. Staff tread lightly through lingering vapors, collecting ornate platters crumbed with princely indulgence. The faint metallic drip of heart-offering vessels still echoes in the marble recesses. Amber pools of spiced broth in clay bowls mirror flickering torchlight like tiny, settling galaxies. Power has never smelled sweeter or more dangerously intoxicating. A golden sunset spills across the marble pillars of the throne chamber, painting the inlaid jade capitals in liquid amber. Court officials gather in clusters, their jeweled collars flashing under wreaths of smouldering copal smoke. Montezuma's ornate obsidian throne sits atop a raised dais, its carved eagles seeming to glare at each supplicant. Feathered banners ripple overhead, their vibrant plumes brushing against frescoed walls depicting ancient triumphs. Nobles flank the emperor in rigid lines, each embroidered cloak, a silent statement of rank and inherited favor. Torches within polished conch shell sconces cast dancing shadows that flicker across coral-studded columns. The hush of expectant courtiers mingles with the distant murmur of tribute-bearing delegations at the outer gates. A hush falls as Montezuma's foot taps the marble floor, tension coiling like a serpent beneath the polished surface. Heads incline when Cortés strides in, broad-brimmed hat shadowing half his steely gaze. Malinche stands close, poised to shape every syllable and shift every power balance at a thought's notice. In this momentary lull, allegiances quiver among glances exchanged like covert barbs. Even the flicker of torchlight seems to pulse in time with whispered intrigues and rival ambitions. Advisors lean forward, their amber beads clacking softly as they calculate the worth of each translated phrase. A rival noble raises a hand, jeweled ring catching the torchlight and challenging a neighboring prince with a silent glare. Montezuma presses his fingertips to the obsidian armrest, every subtle shift broadcasting his wavering resolve. Cortés' scarred fingers brush a cross pendant at his throat, a deliberate gesture marking faith as a tool of conquest. Courtiers adjust jeweled headpieces as if to reinforce their own stations in this high-stakes performance. The hush returns when La Malinche's voice rings out, reshaping Cortés' clipped words into Nahuatl diplomacy. In that instant, the balance of influence shifts imperceptibly, power traded in syllables and silences. A jester's lute tinkles in an adjoining gallery, incongruous music carrying under the stone arches like misplaced joy. Courtiers glance sideways at the delicate melody, stifling smiles that belie their anxious hearts. Rumors swirl that Cortés has promised exclusive trading rights to certain lords, and unspoken jealousy ripples through the ranks. Montezuma's advisors murmur urgent counsel, their placated nods masking deep-seated resentment. A silk curtain flutters at the gallery entrance, a breath of breeze dissolving for a heartbeat before tension resurges. The emperor's gaze flicks to La Malinche, whose calm translation veils each threat and promise in equal poise. Plumes of cochineal smoke drift up toward carved ceilings, heralding the arrival of fresh envoys from distant provinces. Each envoy kneels before Montezuma, their kappa cloths folded precisely to signal fealty and fear. Cortés observes with keen interest, counting on Malinche to spin every plea into a web of loyalty to his cause. The room cools as shadows stretch across mosaic floors mapping the empire's farthest reaches. Nobles shuffle their feet against marble with barely perceptible sounds, betraying anticipation of hidden gains. A hush before translation. Everyone holds their breath as La Malinche weighs Montezuma's carefully crafted appeal. When her words finally fall, they echo like delicate arrows lodged in sovereign pride. In the ensuing silence, the chamber feels suspended between hope and helplessness, a fragile balance on a razor's edge. Perfumed oils dissipate like soft exhalations, reminding all that ceremony and strategy are inseparable here. Montezuma's lips press tight, conveying disappointment even as regal restraint masks the wound. Cortés inclines his head with a faint, knowing smile that sends ripples of unease through the inner circle. A librarian records every gesture, aware that silence and posture can betray more than words. Courtiers swallow nods of reluctant consent, their jeweled necklaces bobbing in quiet acquiescence. The faint scrape of a stone filing slab underscores the gravity of each translated phrase. In the gallery above, a concubine's fans flicker, scattering rose petals that drift down like reluctant blessings. Those petals land at noble's feet, mingling with dust and desire in an unspoken testament to power's reach. A single candle guttering signals the council's nearing end, its sputter echoing anxieties unresolved. As shadows lengthen over the throne, alliances solidify in hushed agreements and shared apprehension. Even the stoic guards sense the shift, their silent vigilance amplified by the chamber's electric hush. With a final nod from Montezuma, the gathering dissolves, leaving behind carved floors etched with unspoken oaths. In the fading glow, each noble departs clutching unseen advantages and the weight of their own secrets. Court politics here are less dance and more daggered waltz, always ready to turn on a heel. Marble banisters cradle each step, their smooth surfaces gliding beneath silk-lined sleeves. Velvet cushions on low stools yield softly to the weight of noble backs. The polished obsidian floor reflects torchlight in slippery sweeps under embroidered hems. Feather-fanned fans brush against braided hair, their quills tickling necklines with cool insistence. Gilded railings register faint warmth where waiting hands lingered too long. Handcrafted sandals imprint fine dust patterns on polished corridors. The carved stone panels absorb the press of perfumed cloaks, imprinting each fold in faint relief. Each tapestry's heavy wool threads hold the sculpted pressure of countless lean shoulders. Soft moss in hidden alcoves cushions the steps of palace gardeners, gentle comfort amid opulence. The occasional brush of a stray petal against marble sends a whisper of silk across the hall. At this juncture, courtiers grow mindful of how each texture affirms status in silent luxury. Beneath lacquered trays, fine grains of crushed jade shift quietly against polished wood. Velvet-lined chests open with muted creaks, their hinges oiled to a cautious whisper. Fingers trace the gentle curvature of a shell basin, noting its cool hardness contrasted by smooth porcelain lining. Cushioned benches absorb the heaviness of embroidered mantles drooping under ceremonial weight. A silk sash falling from a chaperone's waist yields its soft tension to unseen pulls. Each metal goblet's rim bears the faint imprint of lips tinted with pomegranate stain. Soft candlelight warms the rough edges of chipped alcoves, mellowing jagged stone into inviting textures. A single marble column's curvature invites restless hands to wander its polished surface. Braided palm thatch mats frame doorways, their coarse weave juxtaposed with plush carpets. The gentle give of woven reed seating cushions distinguish derrieres with discreet support. Smooth gourds cradled in lacquer bowls offer a tactile paradox of rough shell and glossy finish. Velvet ropes, cordon entryways, their plump fibers brushing the ankles of assembled dignitaries. The hushed compression of silk skirts swirls beneath discreet footfalls across tiled floors. Each ringlet of layered fabric settles in folds that cradle hidden dents from resting elbows. Polished wooden balustrades hum with the warmth of countless grasping palms. In quieter corners, the subtle grit of rolled scrolls lingers under fingertip pressure. The interplay of hard stone and soft cloth coalesces into an understated symphony of touch. A feather pendant brushed against a neck sends shivers down the silk-lined spine of a concubine. Metal clasps on ceremonial headdresses click faintly when adjusted against braided hair. The tactile hush of silk curtains veiling private chambers conveys as much as whispered rumors. Sonorous marble steps bear the gentle tap of jade-encrusted heels descending to inner galleries. Sleeves of trimmed linen trail over carved benches, leaving momentary indentations behind. The press of gilt-edged scrolls into velvet cases produces a muffled thud echoing through corridors. Hidden beneath tapestries, the chill of stone walls meets the warmth exhaled by perfumed clothing. Each ornamental doorknob's brass filigree invites curious touches before opening to grand halls. Velvet ottomans compress under the slow shift of waiting courtiers, springs sighing in quiet protest. Silk-wrapped amphorae bases slide to a gentle stop on marble floors slick with incurred condensation. Inlaid patterns, sandstone screens resist pressure, their carved latticework brushing fingertips. Tiny grains of crushed coral, embedded in plaster whisper under gloved hands as they trace alcove frames. The interplay of textures, hard jade against supple hides, unfolds in every ceremonial space. Even the slightest brush of dusty plaster sends motes floating in golden shafts of light. Silk ropes, suspended from gilt hooks, sway slightly, their motion a tactile lullaby. The cool metal links of a guard's chainmail clink softly when adjusted in the hush. Plush carpets cushion each step, their dense pile folding beneath ornate slippers. Marble ledges hold the faint impression of lace-trimmed sleeves resting during council breaks. Fingertips, grazing the edges of silk-draped windowsills, absorb both warmth and cool breeze. Worn mosaics underfoot reveal smooth channels where marble chips have given way to polished sheen. Each tactile encounter weaves a quiet tapestry of luxury and latent tension in the royal chambers. Even in this palace of sumptuous textures, privilege ends where gravity claims every surface. In the hush that follows, the palace's lavish touchstones dissolve into memory, their sumptuous textures yielding to the stillness of night. Candlelight dims against velvet shadows, and the lingering warmth of jade and silk seeps into quiet dreams. May the soft press of marble and moss guide gentle thoughts and carry the mind toward tranquil rest. Feathered fans have stilled, and the ornate halls stand hushed, as if tucking the empire into a delicate lullaby. If you haven't yet fallen asleep, leave a comment so I know who stayed up longer than I have. Now, drift into dreams beneath these jade-laced halls. We'll meet again when the moon calls us back.